The autumn air was crisp at Sports Authority Field at Mile High on October 14th, 2018, as 76,109 fans packed the stadium to witness what would become a defining moment in both the Denver Broncos and Los Angeles Rams seasons. While Hurricane Michael was devastating the southeastern United States, and Maroon 5's Girls Like You featuring Cardi B dominated radio airwaves, the NFL world turned its attention to this Week 6 matchup that would showcase the stark contrast between two franchises heading in opposite directions. The Los Angeles Rams arrived in Denver as one of the league's most formidable teams, sporting a perfect 5-0 record that had them atop the NFC West and looking like legitimate Super Bowl contenders. Under the guidance of second-year head coach Sean McVay, who had already compiled an impressive 16-5 career record, the Rams had transformed from a struggling franchise into an offensive juggernaut that was capturing the imagination of football fans across the country. McVay's innovative offensive schemes and ability to maximize his players' talents had created a dynamic that was averaging over 30 points per game and looked virtually unstoppable through the first 5 weeks of the season. In stark contrast, the Denver Broncos entered this contest with a disappointing 2-3 record, still reeling from a dismal 2017 campaign that saw them finish 5-11 and miss the playoffs for the second straight year. Head coach Vance Joseph, who was struggling with a 7-14 career record as the team's leader, faced mounting pressure from fans and media alike as the franchise that had kept her Super Bowl 50 just 2 years prior seemed to be in free fall. The Broncos' defense, once the pride of the organization and the foundation of their championship run, had become a liability, surrendering a staggering 958 yards over their previous 2 games leading up to this matchup. This offensive disparity between these two teams was perhaps most evident in their statistical leaders. The Rams boasted quarterback Jared Goff, who had emerged as the NFL's leading passer with 1,727 yards through just 5 games, demonstrating remarkable accuracy and decision-making under McVay's tutelage. Complementing Goff's aerial prowess was running back Todd Gurley, who had established himself as the league's most dangerous red zone threat with 7 rushing touchdowns, consistently finding the end zone and providing the Rams with a reliable ground game that kept opposing defenses honest. The Broncos, meanwhile, were still searching for their identity on both sides of the ball. Quarterback Case Keenum, who had been brought in during the offseason to provide stability at the position, was showing flashes of competence but lacked the consistency needed to elevate the team's offensive performance. The running game had struggled to establish any rhythm, and the defense that had once struck fear into opposing offenses was now being carved up with alarming regularity. As game day approached, the weather conditions promised to play a significant role in the contest. Denver's notorious altitude and cold weather had long been considered advantages for the home team, and Broncos nose tackle Domata Peko embodied this sentiment when he boldly declared before the game, "That's what we do here in Denver, man. We love the cold. We practice all week in it, so hopefully these sunny LA boys come out here and see how cold it is." Peko's comments reflected the Broncos' hope that their familiarity with harsh conditions might help level the playing field against a superior opponent. However, any hopes that weather or altitude might neutralize the Rams' offensive advantages were quickly dispelled once the game began. Todd Gurley delivered one of the most dominant individual performances of the 2018 season, rushing for an astounding 208 yards on 28 carries. That was more than triple the entire Broncos team rushing output of just 60 yards. Gurley's performance was a masterclass in power running, vision, and determination, as he consistently broke through on tackles and turned what should have been modest gains into explosive plays that demoralized the Denver defense. The Rams' offensive line deserves significant credit for Gurley's historic performance, creating massive running lanes and providing the kind of physical dominance that allowed their star back to operate with minimal resistance. Gurley himself was characteristically humble in victory, acknowledging his teammates' contributions by stating, "I wouldn't be able to do it without these guys up front. It was kind of easy for me, honestly, because those guys did such a great job." This selfless attitude exemplified the team-first mentality that had made the Rams such a cohesive and dangerous unit under McVay's leadership. For the Broncos, the rushing attack was virtually non-existent, with rookie running back Royce Freeman managing just 22 yards to lead the team's anemic ground game. The inability to establish any semblance of a running game put enormous pressure on Case Keenum to carry the offensive load through the air, a burden that proved both challenging and, surprisingly, somewhat successful despite the ultimate outcome. While the Rams dominated on the ground, the passing game told a more complex story that revealed both teams' strengths and weaknesses. In what would be considered one of the more surprising aspects of this contest, Denver quarterback Case Keenum actually outperformed the highly touted Jared Goff in terms of pure passing statistics. Keenum completed 25 of 41 passes for 322 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, demonstrating the kind of accuracy and arm strength that had made him a valuable commodity in the quarterback market. Goff, despite his team's dominant victory, struggled with his accuracy and decision-making, completing just 14 of his 28 passes for 201 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 pick. This performance highlighted one of the ongoing concerns about Goff's development, namely his inconsistency when facing pressure or when the game plan didn't unfold exactly as scripted. However, the beauty of the Rams' offensive system under McVay was that it didn't require Goff to be perfect. The running game and defense could carry the load when the passing attack faltered. The receiving corps for both teams provided some of the game's most exciting moments. Los Angeles wide receiver Robert Woods was enjoying what would become his best NFL season to date, and he continued that excellent form with 7 catches for 109 yards, consistently finding openings in the Denver secondary and making crucial catches that sustained drives and kept the Rams' offense moving. Woods had developed into Goff's most reliable target, combining precise route running with sure hands and the ability to make contested catches in traffic. For Denver, veteran wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders proved that he remained one of the league's most dependable pass catchers, hauling in 7 receptions for 115 yards and serving as Keenum's primary weapon in the passing game. Sanders' performance was particularly impressive given the circumstances, as he was operating without a consistent running game to take pressure off the passing attack and was facing a Rams defense that could focus primarily on stopping Denver's aerial assault. One of the few bright spots for the Broncos defense came in the form of rookie pass rusher Bradley Chubb, who announced his arrival as a legitimate NFL threat by recording 3 of the 5 sacks that Denver managed against Goff. Chubb's performance was a glimpse into the future for the Broncos, showing that their first-round draft pick possessed the speed, power, and technique necessary to become an elite pass rusher in this league. His ability to consistently pressure Goff, despite the overall struggles of the Denver defense, provided hope that the unit might eventually return to its championship form with continued development and better supporting cast. The coaching contrast between the two sidelines was stark and telling. Sean McVay, just 32 years old, had already established himself as one of the NFL's brightest offensive minds. His ability to make in-game adjustments and put his players in positions to succeed was evident throughout the contest. McVay's offensive system had transformed not just individual players, like Goff and Gurley, but the entire culture of the Rams organization, creating an environment where players believed they could compete with anyone and execute at the highest level. On the opposite sideline, Vance Joseph faced mounting criticism for his team's defensive struggles, particularly the alarming trend of surrendering massive yards totals in consecutive games. When questioned about potentially taking over defensive play calling duties from coordinator Joe Woods, Joseph demonstrated loyalty to his staff by stating, "Joe's the coordinator, so he's calling the plays." While this shows admirable support for his assistant coach, it also highlights the difficult position Joseph found himself in, trying to balance accountability with team unity, while his job security became increasingly tenuous. The defensive performance by Denver was particularly concerning given the franchise's proud defensive tradition. The unit that had once featured legendary players like Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, and Aqib Talib had been the foundation of the team's Super Bowl 50 championship, but the current iteration seemed incapable of stopping even basic offensive concepts. The Rams' ability to run the ball at will exposed fundamental issues with gap discipline, tackling technique, and overall defensive communication that would need to be addressed if the Broncos hoped to return to relevance. From a broader perspective, this game represents a microcosm of the different trajectories these two franchises were following. The Rams had committed to a complete organizational overhaul, bringing in young, innovative coaching staff, investing heavily in offensive talent, and creating a culture of excellence that permeated every aspect of their operation. The results were evident not just in their perfect record, but in the way they played with confidence, precision, and the kind of swagger that championship teams possess. The Broncos, meanwhile, were still searching for their post-Peyton Manning identity, struggling to find the right combination of coaching, personnel, and system that could restore them to their former glory. The franchise that had been built on defensive dominance and opportunistic offense was now vulnerable on defense and inconsistent on offense, creating a perfect storm of mediocrity that frustrated fans who had grown accustomed to championship-level football. Todd Gurley's recognition as AFC Offensive Player of the Week for his performance was well-deserved, and highlighted just how dominant his showing had been. His 208 rushing yards represented not just individual excellence, but the kind of complete team performance that championship contenders deliver when facing lesser opponents. The ease with which he moved through the Denver defense suggested the Rams' offensive line and scheme were operating at an elite level, creating opportunities that even good running backs might not have been able to maximize. The altitude factor that had been discussed before the game proved to be largely irrelevant, as the Rams' superior conditioning and preparation allowed them to perform at their typical high level despite the challenging environment. This adaptability would serve them well throughout the season as they faced various weather conditions and hostile environments on their path towards what many believed could be a Super Bowl appearance. For Denver fans, this game represents another disappointing chapter in what was becoming a frustrating era of Broncos football. The team that had once been synonymous with championship excellence was now struggling to compete with the league's elite teams, and the gap between their current performance level and their championship aspirations seemed to be widening rather than narrowing. The statistical disparities told the stories of two teams heading in opposite directions. While the Lambs were setting offensive records and playing with the kind of confidence that comes from sustained success, the Broncos were breaking negative records and playing with the tentative approach that often characterizes struggling teams. The 208 rushing yards allowed to a single player was emblematic of deeper systemic issues that couldn't be fixed with simple adjustments or motivational speeches. Looking at the broader context of the 2018 season, this game was proved to be representative of the Rams' dominant regular season performance that would eventually carry them to Super Bowl 53. Their ability to impose their will on opponents, both through Gurley's ground dominance and their overall offensive efficiency, had made them one of the most feared teams in the league and validated the organizational changes they had made over the past 2 years. For the Broncos, this loss would be another step in what would ultimately become a season-long struggle to find consistency and competitiveness. The defensive issues that were exposed in this game would continue to plague them throughout the year, while the offensive inconsistencies would prevent them from capitalizing on the few bright spots in their performance. The individual performances within this game also provided insight into the career trajectories of several key players. Case Keenum's solid statistical showing despite the loss demonstrated that he possessed the talent to be an effective NFL quarterback, but it also highlighted the importance of supporting cast and system fit in determining a player's success. His ability to move the ball through the air against a quality defense showed the Broncos' offensive struggles weren't entirely due to quarterback play. Similarly, Bradley Chubb's 3-sack performance announced his arrival as a legitimate pass-rushing threat and provided hope for the future of Denver's defense. His ability to consistently pressure on an elite quarterback like Goff suggested that he could become the kind of foundational defensive player that the Broncos needed to rebuild their defensive identity. The contrast between the two teams' approaches to building a championship roster was evident in every aspect of this game. The Rams had invested heavily in offensive line talent, skilled position players, and coaching expertise, creating a system where individual talents could be maximized and collective success could be achieved. The Broncos, meanwhile, were still trying to figure the right combination of players and schemes that could restore their competitive edge. As the final whistle blew and the Rams celebrated another dominant victory, the implications of this game extended far beyond the immediate impact of standings and statistics. For LA, it was another confirmation they were legitimate championship contenders who could impose their wills on opponents regardless of venue or circumstance. For Denver, it was a painful reminder of how far they had fallen from their championship heights and how much work remained to be done to restore their competitive relevance.